5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
And with that, welcome to your Media Mosh Podcast. I am your host, Shane Beauregard, coming at you with all your news, reviews, and previews on what to watch on your streaming services, your television, and your local theater. I hope everyone's out there living the dream like I do every single day, people. That's right, I am living the dream. The VP is gone. She's been gone for one day. She'll be back in a couple days, and it has been a very long fucking night for me. It would be nice, and I'm not going to bore you with this too much, if my kids would just listen. I'll take, for the third time I tell them to do something, not even the first, because that's asking way too much, just the third. But no, they never do. To try to get them both to do homework, both to take showers, and my retarded dog running right at the same time. They're lucky it's midweek, or else I'd have a drink in my hand right now. Whew. Okay, now that I got that out of my system, in just a second, I'm going to do a little post-Oscar wrap-up, and I'm not going to bore you too long because I'm sure everyone who saw the videos and watched it or read articles and yada, yada, yada. So let's get into a little bit of news. Ray Donovan, for all you Ray Donovan fans, the 7th season is its last. Showtime announced last week that it is canceling the long-time series. And I'll have to say, Showtime, I don't know what direction they're heading into because Shameless is going to be gone after this season, along with the Claire Danes' Homeland. So those are three big shows that Showtime has on that are not going to be around any longer. Honestly, I can't name another Showtime show. I don't personally have Showtime. I get it once in a while, but that's a pretty big loss for Showtime over there. Sam Raimi, last week was announced that he's going to tackle Doctor Strange 2, which of course led to the onslaught of Spider-Man 3 memes. Jesus Christ, people, give it a rest. He did direct the first two Spider-Mans. I'm sure he's more than capable of directing Doctor Strange 2. So enough with the fucking Tobey Maguire dancing Spider-Man memes, please. On a brighter note, Netflix has announced they are doing another season of Castlevania. If you have not seen the first two seasons, you are really missing out, especially if you played the video game as a kid like I did. It is a very faithful adaptation of the video game series. It is one of the, if not the best animated series on Netflix. No announcement when they're going to drop the third season, but it is in development as we speak. Also, the Blumhouse movie The Hunt, that was supposed to be released last September, but amongst a slew of controversy, got canned. Well, they came out today and said they were releasing that movie They were going to release that movie March 13th, 2020. And I'm all in. I wanted to see it way back in September. It stars Hilary Swank and the only Betty Gilpin from Glow. I'm all over that. That's right in my wheelhouse. I will be there in March to watch that movie. And that is all the news I'm going to really get into. Let's get right into the Oscar talk. Now, I'm going to keep this very short. I'm not really surprised about the results. In fact, I'm pretty happy about them. The only thing I will say, I thought Sam Mendes should have gotten Best Director for 1917. Parasite was in fact the best movie of the year, and it showed. I'm glad it won Best Picture. I'm glad 1917 also won for cinematography because it was the best directed movie of the year in my opinion. So at least I got that kudos. Brad Pitt of course won. And I for one, people, as long as celebrities don't go on too much of a political tangent, it really doesn't bother me if they say something for 10, 30 seconds like Brad Pitt. And this is what I can't stand about today's society, really, in the news cycle. I hate the news cycle. I don't watch the news. I have no idea what the fuck's going on out there, and that's the truth. It's sad or not, it's the truth. The headline on one of the news stations, and I won't reveal which one, it said Brad Pitt gives politically charged, that's the key word there, Oscar speech. Now, if you saw it, he made a statement that lasted about 10 to 15 seconds long about some senator during the impeachment trial. And the rest of the minute 50, he thanked his family, he thanked Quentin Tarantino, he went on to do the normal shit. So if you consider that politically charged, because I don't, if you do, you have a problem, is all I'm saying. And just, I'm not one of these people who get down on actors. Do I believe they should be spouting that stuff off? No. But again, if they keep it short, I don't care. It's not going to sway me on their opinion of them. If they do good work and I like them, I have no problem with it. I'm not one of these people who find out they're part of a political party and automatically don't watch their catalog of movies. I think that's full of shit, if you want my opinion. It's not gonna stop me watching someone like Robert De Niro or name a celeb, Brad Pitt. It won't stop me from watching their work because I like their movies, so I'm gonna continue to watch their movies. They have every right to do what they want and vote however they want. It's just not gonna stop me. I just find that kind of shit ridiculous in my opinion. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but I just wanted to put it out there for everybody. So I did watch the Joaquin Phoenix speech. It was weird. That's a weird guy, and that was a weird speech. But overall, it was a lackluster show, I thought. They need to get a host back in there. I'm tired of this hostless Oscar shit. Let's get it rolling. So, all in all, I'm happy. If you haven't seen Parasite, you should really go check that movie out. I guess the only little surprise I had was I really thought Tarantino was going to win for Best Original Screenplay, which also went to Parasite, which again isn't a big problem because it was a well-written movie and it was a good screenplay. So, but I'm kind of surprised Tarantino got locked out of the Oscars this year. The Irishman really deserved to be locked out. They got their nominations, and that's really where they went and should have went. So I have no problem with that as well. And that is my Oscar wrap-up for this year. Now let's turn our attention to the theaters next week, Valentine's Day weekend. And this is the one weekend I can thank God for my VP because she can give two craps about Valentine's Day. Hates cards, which I don't like buying cards either. And she hates flowers because she thinks they're a waste of money. You buy them and 3 or 4 or 5 days later, they're dead. So she doesn't like flowers. So no Valentine's Day for me. But you have Sonic the Hedgehog coming out, the Blumhouse Fantasy Island. And lastly, you have the Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Will Ferrell-led Downhill, which is getting bombarded with bad reviews. In fact, I did not know it was a remake of a French film. They're saying go check that film out instead and just leave this one alone, and I think I will listen to them. Coming out on Netflix next week, you have, on the 13th, you have Narcos Mexico Season 2, along with Dragon Quest, the animated series. On the 14th, you have Cable Girls Season 5, Part 1. And on the 16th, you have the Anna Kendrick, Sam Rockwell, Mr. Right, alongside Timothy Roth. If you haven't seen that movie, it is a very, very funny movie. Very well done. Came out about 3 or 4 years ago. But we're not supposed to talk about that movie because it was written by Max Landis, John Landis' son, who got wrapped up into the Me Too movement. He also wrote Chronicle and some other movies, and he has been heard from since Mr. Right. Moving over to Amazon Prime, here are a couple new movie releases they have out right now. Fighting with My Family with Florence Pugh. That started off the year for Florence Pugh. Quite the year it was. Then next you have the Shia LaBeouf Honey Boy, which I guess is a semi-autobiographical movie. You have the Tom Hardy Joel Edgerton movie Warrior, which is one of my freaking favorite movies of the decade. So that is what you can watch on Amazon Prime. Now let's get into what I watched this week, which I was kind of all over the place. I'll put it out there. So I had every intent to get into Lock and Key. And I was sitting there wrapping up Sex Education Season 2, or at least trying to. Then I got a random text by a buddy saying, have you checked out Ragnarok on Netflix? And of course I didn't. I saw the trailer, so I kind of knew what it was about. And I ended up watching the first episode, which turned into me plowing through all 6 episodes. And this is one of these shows that I have no idea why I watched this show. There's no reason for me to hit the next episode. It had an interesting concept. I did like it. It's kind of a modern day on the Norse gods, being Thor in his battle with the giants, and you get a larger ecosystem message built into this movie. It's set in Norway. It's a Norwegian film, so it is subtitled. It's part cheese, it's part supernatural. I did like where they were taking it, and it's just a mediocre show at best. There was no reason for me to keep watching the show, but it did keep my attention. It's about 45 minutes per episode, so it is a quick watch. And I do hope they have a season 2 because they kind of left you hanging there at the end of season 1. I will say for a Norwegian show, I don't know how their writing goes, but their writing is kind of awkward, and their dialogue is a little awkward. But they move fast. It's like they put together a plot, and they move it along pretty quick. I'll give them that. So all in all, I was pretty entertained with Ragnarok. It was right up my alley. It was set in high school, so that's another plus in my direction. I like pretty much any show set in high school. So I give it a 2.75 out of 5. It's not going to hit. It's not going to be for everybody. But if you're into the supernaturally type of shows, or if you're into Norse mythology, then this might be for you. So go check that out on Netflix right now. Here's my quick review on Toy Story 4, which did bring home an Oscar for Best Animated Film. I personally thought that should have went to Claus, but that's my own personal taste. This one is sitting at 97% on Rotten Tomato critic score with a 94% audience score. To quickly wrap it up, this is the weakest of the Toy Story movies, and that's not a bad thing. So it was very entertaining. This movie moved very quick. It was a very simplistic movie. You had Bonnie, who moved on to kindergarten. She ended up making this craft spork toy named Forky or Sporky, and they're going on a trip, and he gets lost. And Woody decides to go track this down because it has an emotional attachment for Bonnie and helps her get through kindergarten. So there's some nice messages along the way. I did like some of the characters they introduced. I like the Key and Peele Duck and Chick character. I really liked the Duke Kaboom. And yes, partly because that was voiced by Keanu Reeves, but I thought he was funny. But I really enjoyed the Bo Peep story arc, how they turned her into just a badass lost toy. And it did get a little sappy at the end with the Woody storyline, him trying to find his purpose in life and what his purpose is. So it was a very enjoyable movie. It just was the worst of the Toy Story movies. But I had a good time with it. I laughed several times out loud. I will give Toy Story 4 a 3.5 out of 5. You can find this right now on Disney+. And the main event for the week was Birds of Prey, which did finish number 1 at the box office, bringing in $33 million. But as a matter of fact, WB is retitling the movie and hoping that leads to a bigger weekend this coming weekend. It is now called Harley Quinn ... Birds of Prey. This one is sitting at 81% critic score with an 81% audience score. And honestly, you know me, folks, if you listen to me through the years, I usually stick up for these DC movies. I do at least find them mildly entertaining on some levels. And some of them I actually do like better than what critics and most of you think about these films. But this one was tough. I'll be honest with you. I don't even know to really start with this movie because I don't want to come down too hard on it. I'll give you what I thought were the pluses of this movie first. Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie just continued what she was doing with Suicide Squad and expanded it in this film here. I also did like most of the cast. Journey Smote Bell, who I've never heard of. She was in the show Friday Night Lights and True Blood. She played Canary. She's probably my second favorite character. I do like the Huntress character in general, and I do like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but I just felt like I didn't like her take on the character in this particular film. And I did like Rosie Perez, or more or less her cleavage. I'm not a fan of Rosie Perez. I can't get over her voice. I just can never get over her voice. But they still look real and they still look spectacular, so that gets a plus for me. The action scenes were shot really well. They took a nice wide angle, so you kind of saw everything that was going on. So it was a well-directed film. Story-wise, it's very simplistic to the point of really... You have the Jokers breaking up with Harley Quinn, or vice versa. And I did think this was a cool part of the movie. Because she's not under the Joker's protection, she's kind of open market to everybody that she ever wronged. So that everyone's coming after her at every different angle. So I did like that part of the movie. But the main plot basically was this diamond that belonged to the Bertinelli family. And the Black Mask, played by Ewan McGregor, is trying to get his hands on. That's basically it. And he is trying to kill Harley Quinn only because he doesn't like her. That's it. That's the only reason. He does not like her. We don't understand really why. This movie is kind of narrated throughout by Margot Robbie, which is another thing I really didn't like. They kept moving you forward. They took you back and she explained things. I didn't like that. I just keep it flowing. Find a better way to structure your film than that. That kind of bothered me. Ewan McGregor as Black Mask was laughable. Like, it could have been a good villain, but he is probably the most one-note villain I have seen in a comic book movie in the last 10 years. One note, and he's way over the top. It was a total wasted performance by Ewan McGregor. And I hate to pile on child actors, but Ellie J. Bosco, who played Cassandra Cain, who is the worst pickpocket I've ever seen in my entire life. She's the one that pickpockets this damn diamond, and everyone's sent out to get her, including Harley Quinn. And it wasn't the acting itself. I'm sure it was the way this role was written. But she was almost, if not as annoying as that chubby kid from Deadpool 2. So I wanted to punch that fucking kid right in his face. I could not stand that character. This one is right up there with that character. And really, it should be called a Harley Quinn movie because they don't get together or come together until literally the last 10 minutes of the movie. The last 10 minutes when they actually join forces to take out or to fight Black Mask. I had flashes of Punisher Warzone in here, which was a better movie than this, by the way. Suicide Squad. This movie was just all over the place. It deserved a better fate. I get it. And plus, let's talk about the rated R stuff. I think that also contributed to the low box office score because I read today where 54% of the audience was male, right? And as with Deadpool, more male teenagers or young adults ended up seeing that movie. This should have been rated PG-13. There was really nothing in this movie besides some language every now and again that warranted the rated R that it got. Most of the violence or the graphic violence was kind of seen with the camera pulled away or off shot or off screen. You could have toned up the language just a little bit, kept the action there, and you would have got more young girls or teenagers into this movie to see this. Big mistake there. I don't know where they go from here. I did have really high hopes for this movie, and I don't know why. I thought it'd at least be better than Suicide Squad, but in my opinion, it wasn't. So, and I really do enjoy Margot Robbie, like most people do, as Harley Quinn. And again, before I wrap this review up, I really thought as this movie's going along, this would be a better movie if I was drunk, or at least if I was drinking. So, when it comes out to DVD or digital, I may give it one more watch and start drinking at the beginning of the movie to see where it kind of ends. But all in all, I don't get the people who are saying this movie was great. I'm not seeing it here with this one. They're saying this is the lowest opening DC movie since Jonah Hex, and I see why. Like, so far in the last 8-10 years of DC movies, this is by far the worst. But because of the action scenes and because of the cast, I'm going to give this a 2.5 out of 5 for me for Birds of Prey. Let's see what it does moving forward. Being a weak month, and I mean a weak month, maybe it can start picking up some steam. We'll see. Now, before I wrap this up, I put a little Twitter question out at the beginning of the week, and I would have put this movie in here had I asked this after I've seen this movie. What are some movie soundtracks that are actually better than the movie that they are in? This one would have been in there, like I said. I like to give a couple shout-outs of people who actually answered the question. I'm going to try to move this along quickly as I can. Mike, and Oscar at and Oscar on Twitter chimed in with Space Jam and Batman Forever. Now, you'll notice there will be a couple movies that pop up on many people's lists, and I'll get into that in a little more detail as that happens. Batman Forever happens to be one of those movies. And his controversial picks were Trainspotting and Scott Pilgrim. Honestly, I've only seen Scott Pilgrim once. I don't really remember the soundtrack, and I am with you, though. I am not a big fan of Scott Pilgrim. You have the Mobile Horror Companion at Mobile HC666. You have Maximum Overdrive, which is really an AC/DC soundtrack, and that is a terrible Stephen King movie with Emilio Estevez. I'm sorry, the only cool part was the Green Goblin-looking truck that was trying to kill everybody. And then Death Wish 2, which kind of took me out of left field. And that was a Jimmy Page soundtrack or produced soundtrack. Next you have Ocho Duo Parlay Hour, which I just like saying. At OD Parlay Hour, they chimed in with Singles. That was a 1992 Cameron Crowe film. Pretty much every Seattle sound band was in that movie. That's a Matt Dillon, Bridget Fonda movie. I haven't seen it probably since it came out, but it was a kick-ass soundtrack there. The Soul Wizard podcast chimed in again with Singles and Judgment Night, two movies that you'll see a lot on this list. And I'll get into Judgment Night in just a little bit. Pino Comics at Pino Comics also chimed in with Judgment Night. Told you that was a popular one. The Nomcast at Nomcast Pod. Godzilla, which also was another popular one. That one had Foo Fighters, Green Day, Silverchair, and of course the awful, terrible fucking P. Diddy remade Led Zeppelin song, which was like the song of the soundtrack. And coming from a Godzilla fan, that it's true. That was a crap movie, but a pretty good soundtrack for back in the day. Mr. Argue Myself chimed in with Spawn which featured Marilyn Manson, Prodigy, Cypress Hill, and some Henry Rollins. Again, that was the Michael J. White, Charlie Sheen's dad there. Martin Sheen, there you go. I had such high hopes for that movie. Loved the comic, and that movie was just an abomination. The podcast chimed in with Tank Girl, which the only thing I remember from that movie is the Bjork song, and again with Maximum Overdrive. And just one more here, you have another millennial reviewer at another millennial R chimed in with Drive with Ryan Gosling. Love that movie. That's probably my favorite Ryan Gosling movie. And I remember that being mostly I don't want to say musical, a score more than a soundtrack, so I'll have to go back and watch that. They did have a couple songs on there, one by Electric Youth, but I actually I do like that song. Sorry you didn't like that movie, but I love that movie. And here's a movie that I'm just not going to recognize as being bad. So no offense to anyone on here, because this was on several people's lists, but screw you, no offense. The Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger, directed by John McTiernan. Soundtrack included AC/DC, Megadeth, Alice in Chains, Aerosmith. I mean, you name it, they were in there. But again, that was a fucking underrated Schwarzenegger film. It was a different Arnold film. I liked what they're going for. I had fun with it. It had great action. And again, it was just different. I think that's why people didn't like it. Go back and watch Last Action Hero if you haven't seen it in a while. I think it was a little ahead of its time. Yeah, I'm saying it. It was a little ahead of its time. So I refuse to put that on this list. I just wanted to make that a mention, though. And here are my movies that I put in here. I also went with 1995's Batman Forever, the Val Kilmer Batman that we all try to forget. That soundtrack included Mazzy Star, Method Man, highlighted by U2 and Seal. The 2011 Take Me Home Tonight with Topher Grace, a very young Chris Pratt, and the very hot Teresa Palmer. That was an 80s soundtrack that I really liked. You had NWA, Motley Crue, you had Duran Duran. But really, you're going to name a movie Take Me Home Tonight and there's no Eddie Money in the soundtrack? I mean, that's blasphemy. That is blasphemy. And the movie typically was about a nerd trying to get the hot girl at the party. If you want to watch a movie like that, go watch the Can't Hardly Wait movie with Jennifer Love Hewitt. And I'll give you 2 reasons why you should watch that movie over this one. Next, and I hate to say this because he's probably one of my favorite musicians of all time. That is 1984 Purple Rain with Prince. The movie was very subpar, very poorly acted, but the soundtrack is just immortalized in music history. That is a great soundtrack. 2 more on my list. The 1993 Judgment Night, which was mentioned by several people. That movie starred Emilio Estevez, Jeremy Piven, Cuba Gooding Jr., Dennis Leary, and House of Pain, I believe. And it's about a bunch of guys that rented an RV to go see a fight, and they get lost in Chicago, and somehow they get tangled up with Dennis Leary, who's really the bad guy, and he's a hard bad guy to believe he's a bad guy. And then the House of Pain are his thugs, and they spend the whole night chasing these guys through the projects. Very mediocre movie, but this is one of those rap rock fused albums that I still rock to this day. It stars Biohazard and Onyx, my personal favorite, the Helmet and the House of Pain song. But you also have Pearl Jam and Cypress Hill in here. Great album to just listen to. Faith No More, Booyah Tribe. Really good soundtrack. Again, I still listen to this one today. And next on my list, which I'm in the minority, I'm probably the only one who's seen this, or at least remembers this movie, and that is the 1984, what is described as a rock and roll fable, Streets of Desire, with a very young, steamy, hot Diane Lane, Michael Paré, and William Dafoe. And the only thing I can remember about this movie is William Dafoe is in charge of this fucking this car gang. It's set in the 50s or 60s, I believe. And he ends up kidnapping Diane Lane, who's a singer at a club, and Michael Paré is hired to get her back from William Dafoe. So it is really over the top, very operatic, very theatrical kind of movie. The soundtrack includes several songs by The Fix, but it's highlighted by the Dan Hartman I Can Dream About You. And I know you know what that song is. I don't care. I like that song. It was a good music throughout the movie. But if you haven't seen the movie, go check it out for yourself. See what you think about it. Streets of Desire, 1984. That is my list. I want to thank everyone who contributed and at least answered the question. I hope I got your names right and your Twitter handles right, so don't come at me if I screwed that up just a little bit. Until then, folks, hopefully I'll survive this week, and I'll come at you next week. My Fantasy Island review, I just got done watching an Elijah Wood Come to Daddy movie tonight, which was fucking out there and weird. And who knows what else, folks. But until then, go check me out on Facebook Media Mosh. Go to my Twitter at Shane Media Mosh. More importantly, go to the Apple Podcast Store. Download me, share me, leave me that 5-star review. And I would like to additionally thank the podcast. He did leave me a review. I really do appreciate those. And then circle back and go check out Mr. Arg myself on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, and the Twitters. 3 different platforms for 3 different types of content. Until then, get caught up. Get caught up in the mosh.